29th, 2025. I was caught off guard there. The April 29th, 2025 Wisconsin Tug User Group meeting. I am Tammy, and I'll be hosting today. So our content today is all about marketing your Tableau dashboard. So my cohorts, leadership team, myself and Robert, Tosh, and Brady. So we are excited to bring you this quarterly meeting today. Our agenda is the welcome that I'm doing right now, an attendee poll, and some general updates. Communication between developer and end user presentation by Olga. And then followed by a presentation from Katie on Figma and Tableau. And then the leadership team, those of us who went to the Tableau conference, will give some updates on fun things that they saw and learned at the Tableau conference. And then we'll have upcoming events and giveaways is what we'll wrap up with. So for the swag giveaways, we will have 3 of them, which will be 3 people who stay active during the meeting. So we can do the poll, and I will let Brady, you're doing it, right?
Yep.
I will let Brady take over for the poll part.
I just sent the poll link in the chat. Can you stop sharing, Tammy?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay, I'll give everyone a second. It's in the chat as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. So, first question, favorite part of Wisconsin? A lot of people like the up north. My up north is going to Lambeau for a Packer game. Otherwise, I'm
True that.
Well, a lot of people like the up north. Not as much as an outdoors person, so that lowers that one for me.
In my first marriage, my husband was from Superior. So we had weekly trips, 6 hours plus up north. It soured me on up north for the rest of my life.
Yes, understandable. A couple weeks ago was Tableau Conference 2025 out in San Diego. It was a good time, but tried to learn as much as I could. I'm been going through my notes this week and starting to go through some of the recorded sessions as well. I did the virtual one last year. I struggle with being able to ignore people that are constantly pinging you throughout the day when you're watching a session. That's my biggest challenge with that.
Same.
Next question. Speaking of Lambeau, last week the NFL draft was in Green Bay. Did anyone go there? I think there was 600,000 people they had throughout the 3 days. But one of the bigger events that's happened in Green Bay for a while. I believe it was the first draft in Green Bay since 1940. So one of the things we'll cover this later is that like Tableau is starting to spread out into like different products. And one of the things they covered in the Tableau conference is the Tableau Plus and Tableau Next, along with server, cloud, and desktop. Curious if anyone's using those yet. And going forward, like I build all my dashboards on Tableau desktop, they're going to have a lot more abilities you can do with Tableau Plus, especially in Next, building dashboards online, so you can use AI agents that you can't use on desktop. How many Tableau users are you or your team working with? It could be anyone from much smaller companies, or you're working with clients that have 10 to 15 to massive internal users. I'm probably in the 101 to 200 range currently. But our team definitely 201 plus. It's a lot of people to try to learn how to use Tableau. So one of the things I'll be working on this year is better user adoption, how to train people better.
Yeah, I see someone chatted 2,178 users for them. That's a pretty big.
That's a lot.
That is a lot to manage. Have you read a full book about data in the past few years? I have one that I've partially started, and it's on the to-do list, but haven't committed to joining to either join the data book club or reading that much yet. And then the final question, do you make wireframes for your dashboards? One of the things that was hammered a lot at Tableau conference is like, you should be making wireframes, whether it's Figma, whether it's on a piece of paper. A lot of people should be doing that. I have never made a wireframe in my life, so that's also not great if I'm training people. I'm gonna have to start working on that.
Yeah. The only thing I missed from being in office was the whiteboard that I had hanging on my wall, because I would sketch things out on that whiteboard. At home, I don't have that, so I do miss that.
Yep. And that's really it for the poll. Thanks, everyone. We'll stop sharing.
Oh, shoot. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. Are you able to see my slides again?
You have to alt-tab it again, but we can probably let Olga share.
Okay. Yep. So I will just present Olga. She is going to do a presentation for us, communication between developer and end user, and I will stop sharing.
Excellent. Okay, I think it's all systems go.
Yeah.
I'm going to start my timer on 15 minutes. We'll try to keep us on the schedule, on the agenda today. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone who has joined. Thank you so much for the opportunity, to the leadership team of TUG. Thank you so much again for giving me this window to contribute to the conversation, a very interesting conversation. And I truly believe that my content and Katie's content are very much aligned. And now that, especially now that you mentioned designing the dashboard using, let's say, frame wiring or sketching, for example, I think, again, all of the content is very well aligned. So just a couple of points about myself, in case you're wondering who is speaking, who is going to take the next 15 minutes. So I usually introduce myself as someone who has been on both sides of the meeting room. The majority of my career has been spent on the side of the table that is the end user, one of many decision makers, or even someone who sometimes served as a liaison between a data analyst and a project team. And just relatively recently, I switched to the other side. And though mostly I work in Python, in Amazon cloud-based machine learning pipelines, I do appreciate Tableau for its versatility, just an amazing capacity for data visualization. And it also aligns a little bit with my personal research that I did a few years ago in terms of human decision making. So my presentation will focus not so much on data analysis and putting a dashboard together from that perspective, but as much on the making it effective when we're collaborating or interacting with our users. And I try to position it from the standpoint of, so what is the purpose? What is the purpose of presenting any dashboard, whether, let's say, it's for a single meeting, or it's something that you publish on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis? And one of the general purposes that I thought I could formulate is that it is to capture and convince your audience, no matter what time pressure or perception, attention deficit pressure they may be experiencing, and do it in a minute or less. And I will explain a little bit about that last part later. So again, from my experience, from my personal experience, I spent about 20 years in healthcare. Time and perception deficit or pressure are just the reality check. I'm sure you could probably resonate with the statement when you meet with your project owners or your business partners. They most likely come from another meeting. When I was working at my medical center, I actually competed with myself for the executive's time. If I worked with the same executive for, let's say, on 4 or 5 projects, I had to compete to schedule that time. So what usually happens, the decision makers may join the meeting while still processing the previous meeting that they just walked out of or logged off. That's why it is so important with your information. If you're a data analyst, a data scientist, you're the owner of the dashboard and you're presenting it, to make sure that you're able to rewire them, to focus them, to reconcentrate, and make sure that you're capturing their attention, you're holding that attention, and you're convincing them about the quality of the data, accuracy, completion, integrity in a minute or less. And you're, in case, again, here you wondered why such a statement, what we could say, and again, I apologize, we have a pollen season here in Wisconsin, so I think I'm a little bit under that influence. So what headwinds, as you're trying to accomplish your purpose, what headwinds could you possibly be facing? And this is the research that actually transcends not just data visualization, not just Tableau. It would be applicable in any setting. So today, when someone is interacting with a visual, the attention span may be as short as 8 seconds, maybe up to 47 seconds, depending on the circumstances. So if I wasn't able to capture your attention for the first, let's say, half a minute, it will be very difficult for me to actually recover that ground and to keep your attention throughout the presentation. Users also have limited proficiency. Again, end users, not Tableau users, but your audience. Many of them are not comfortable with dynamic data, not comfortable with advanced features. Most work with basic navigation, right, with static data. And I discovered that when I published my first dashboard, and I was so proud of my advanced filtering. And every single user, every single person I showed it to, requested me to turn off between probably 50% and 90% of my advanced filtering, saying that it's actually confusing. And well, again, reality check, something that showed off my skill, apparently completely misaligned with the need of my needs of my audience. That's why that point number 3 is actually most important to me personally. Again, maybe it will resonate with you. You will find this, again, information not so much new, but confirming or maybe in conflict with your personal best practices. But decision makers, when they look at a dashboard, at a scorecard, doesn't matter, something with data, they're going through this chain reaction of recognizing the information, processing it, and then being able to actually integrate it on the spot into some discussion or decision making. So, for example, in healthcare, if I was showing a scorecard or a dashboard with graphs about our performance, let's say in terms of new business, patient volumes, surgery volumes, the audience, my business decision makers, had to be able to process that information and in, let's say, 20 minutes, start making different decisions of how we're going to change a business plan or, let's say, a budget. That has real life consequences, such as staffing, for example, budgeting for resources. So for decision makers, the data that you are presenting, as you all well know, will result in real life decisions and downstream effect. So they need as little cost, if you will, to interact with the data so that their cognitive capacity is available to process and discuss the information. And number 4 is something I actually found on LinkedIn. There was a post that became very popular from Tableau users. What other requests have you received after presenting your dashboard? I've heard of Excel files, I've heard of slides, but screenshots, that was something, again, to me as a newer Tableau user, that was something interesting that I discovered. So I thought, okay, so how do we make our dashboards too good to not to use, so to say, too good to pass? And one of the answers for that, just checking my time here, is applying natural patterns. So what could we do to improve the performance of a dashboard? Well, you can apply something called placement and quantity design. We know that our eyes move in a certain direction when we are facing a screen. So using a Z pattern, for example, placing most important information in the critical spots above the middle of the line, using well-recognized images. These are all of the options. Also, from the 50s of the last century, we know that humans hold only about 5 items in their working memory. So I tend to overload my presentation. So I always check how soon is it before I run out of those 5 critical items. And here, for example, I posted an example, how easy, how quickly we actually run out of the human capacity to focus on one slide and maintain everything that is being presented. So here I actually ran over 5. I have about 7 to 8 critical items that I would like you to keep attention to. So again, something to check for me personally. Did I overload? Did I place everything correctly? How did I use this little Bermuda triangle that I call where eyes naturally travel? Did I place something bright there that people do, look at that area or not? So that's one of the principles that could be utilized. Going with common visuals. So of course, everybody knows that humans process visuals much faster than text, actually up to 60,000 times faster. The caveat, the trade-off, is that we're wired to go for speed versus precision. We want to understand everything quickly, and we'll actually fill in missing information when necessary. That's why using default familiar shapes, color encodings, symmetry, simplicity is very important. And again, it will speed up that automatic understanding of your data, preparing for a discussion. So here I have an example of same data, global temperature from 1850 to 2016, but used for 2 different purposes. So for you, the masters of Tableau, I am sure the image on the right is the winning image because it is just riveting, right? It is quite sophisticated in its approach. But for a busy manager, for example, the same information would need to be presented in a way that they can immediately understand, and it's usually a simplified line graph. So same information, just two different approaches. And the last principle that I thought could be helpful is something called pre-attentive attributes. And again, I'm sure in your practice, you have experimented with a few, you found those that work for you, and you said, okay, I'm going to utilize them. To me, what was interesting is that for that immediate and automatic pre-processing to be effective, you will need to be aware, again, of what works and what does not. So again, keeping that trade-off of speed versus precision for our brains, filling in gaps based on prior experience, and the speed at which we process in milliseconds visual information. I found it interesting that from the Tableau website, that's where I located this information, is that between highly precise and imprecise, the surprising part for me is that size is considered an imprecise application of processing information. And again, I would love to hear in the comment section what your default tool is, so to say, what for what type of data. Because again, in the Tableau content, which was great for preparing for the certification, again, you may have seen this example before. The same data can be presented in so many ways. You will need to know your audience and your preference to understand, do I go for length, size? Do I go for the color and contrast? Or the controversial pie chart, which will probably take a separate presentation, so we will not discuss that. But would a pie chart be actually suitable for my cause or for my purpose here? So again, quite a bit of options here, going with the grain of the human psychology, not necessarily against it, but understanding the audience that is coming to your meeting or logging in virtually. And if I have not convinced you yet, I actually would like you to take about 20 to 30 seconds and count the number of 4s in this image, which has not been treated. So there is no pre-attentive treatment. And I'll just look at my timer for your own results. You don't have to report anything, but if you can take about 20-25 seconds and count the number of 4s and just notice how long and how much effort, how much cognitive effort and concentration it will take. So just counting down, we have about 5 seconds left here. And again, hopefully this will help to convince you or to reaffirm something you already know, is that if we switch to the pre-attentive treatment, how much easier it is to pick out those 4s. And actually, you don't probably even have to use any tracking device, but literally in a second, you should be able to extract the information. So that will conclude my my content, my presentation. And again, I was hoping just to contribute to this ongoing topic and to hear your reactions. These are my best practices of how to hold the audience's attention and make sure they, are ready to process the data and to start the discussion. Or I am interested in some other best practices. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing at the moment.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Olga. That was awesome. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. So we'll move on to Haley, but if you have any questions for our presenters, please make sure to put those in the Q&A. I won't jump back to the PowerPoint because it's just an introduction slide for Katie, and I will let Katie introduce herself. But Katie, if you want to grab the screen share, Katie's going to talk with us about Figma and Tableau.
Yes. So, hi, I'm Katie. Tosh and I actually work together. We've worked together for about 5 years. I am a consultant with Rising Tides Analytics, and I've been working in data for about a decade, and doing different industries like healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, just kind of all over the board with consulting, and then also had a corporate job in healthcare for a couple of years as well. So today I'm going to talk to you about kind of general design concepts, a lot which will actually overlap with what Olga has already presented. But first we're going to kind of focus on Figma a little bit, which I'm not sure how many of you have actually heard of Figma, but it's a pretty heavy program that's used in graphic design. But we're going to kind of discuss how it can actually help make your dashboards even better. So as we walk through it, we're going to talk like, what is Figma, give you a little bit of an introduction, and then we're going to talk about how exactly do we integrate using Figma with Tableau. So we're going to do that in two kind of ways, which we've already touched on wireframing a little bit, which it sounds like most people are not using wireframes or prototyping very much currently. And then we're also going to talk about what integrating Figma with Tableau kind of means and how that's done. And then we're going to go through some design best practices, which is probably the part that will overlap the most with what Olga presented already. But we'll dig in a little deeper and we'll have a couple of other concepts as well. So what is Figma? Figma is generally it's a graphic design tool. It is both browser-based or it's a desktop app. You can actually do everything that you need to be able to do in Figma in either your browser, or you can download your desktop application. I'm partial to the desktop app, but that's just kind of me in general. I'd rather use desktop apps than browser navigation and everything. It's generally it's free for individual users. So if you're just wanting to go in by yourself, do some designing, do some messing around, creating your own design elements and stuff, that's free. When it starts to cost is when you need to share information between team members. So that's when you need to have like a subscription for it. And I believe it's about $15 a month per user. So it's pretty comparable to like a viewer license in Tableau. So we're going to take a look at the website. And it will always and forever pop open on a different screen. So this is kind of what you get when you log in. This is obviously me and Tasha and our team has been using this for a couple of years now. So we have quite a few things in here that we've created over time. But this is generally what Figma looks like from a browser point of view. I also have it open in the desktop, which is a very similar view. Very good in organization, sharing content, stuff like that. So from like a practical standpoint, we can talk about like how to actually use Figma. So Figma is really great for both prototyping or wireframing, which I'll kind of use interchangeably. And then there's also ways to actually integrate the designs that you create in Figma into Tableau directly so that you can have your designs directly in your dashboards that are then published to either server or cloud. So the 4 ways that kind of happens are through backgrounds on your dashboards. You can use it for buttons. Icons are really great. And then also something called overlays that we use that are for like live-in dashboard documentation and instruction. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. But those are kind of 4 ways that we'll integrate Tableau and Figma. So yeah. And then a really great resource for this is, I don't know if you guys have heard of Lindsay Betzendahl before, but she is a Tableau visionary, and she does a lot of her design actually as Figma and Tableau. So if you'd see, she actually has a whole series on YouTube about kind of basics in Figma, and then talks through how to integrate the two together. So gives a really good basic understanding of Figma, things like framing and shapes and how to use the text and all that fun stuff. And then also bringing that into Tableau and how to design for your Tableau dashboards. So she's a really great resource to have. I have kind of a lot of links all throughout this presentation. I'll make sure that the team is able to send this out with any follow-up emails so that you guys can have access to this at the end of my presentation. So then let's dig in a little bit further into prototyping. So what is prototyping in general? It is creating a low fidelity version of your dashboard, or providing an image of what your dashboard will look like without the elements that are going to come from Tableau, like the interactivity or the live data. So there's a lot of benefits to doing this. First and foremost, it actually removes the distraction of the data. So you're basically just giving your stakeholders a picture of what your dashboard's going to look like with just fake data in it, kind of standard bar charts, a standard line chart, standard pie charts, whatever it is that you're going to have in the places that they're going to be, with the correct colors and all that kind of stuff already created. And it allows that distraction of data to go away so that you can just get alignment on the actual design. It allows them to see an image of the dashboard beforehand, so they're not surprised when you build it in Tableau. And then it also allows for quicker iterations, because you're able to kind of walk through just like a very low fidelity version. It's just an image. And then you can take feedback and iterate it very quickly into your dashboard, instead of having to do things like data rework on the back end to make Tableau do what you want it to do if you decided to use a different chart, or realized you needed new filters and you actually need to add more data into your data set. It allows you to get all of that information up front. So then when you actually get into your development time in Tableau, it can be used a lot more quickly and intelligently and effectively on that end. So I have a couple of examples that I have built. Both of them are for fake companies. I made up the company Starscope. And so I have that one created here. This is just so this is something I built in Figma. So these are all elements that are created in Figma. Each piece of this is like a little line chart, a pie graph. All this stuff is created in Figma. And then what I would do is export this as an image and email this out to stakeholders, managers, whoever it is that's using this dashboard will get this image, so that they can then walk through it and then prepare any feedback for like a meeting that we were to have, where they say, I really like the icons. I don't like the map. I think the map is too big, whatever it is that they have feedback on. They can kind of prepare that and we can talk through it. Yeah, so this is one of them. I have another one that I actually made for an actual client that I took out any client information on. Obviously, it's not called logo here. So this is a dashboard that is more KPI focused. So obviously there's a bunch of KPIs across the top. Clearly not all of them are 25%. So you can see this is very clearly fake data. Your country bar charts never quite line up this nicely in actual data. So clearly this is fake data, but it's there to give an idea of what the dashboard is going to look like. So you can discuss colors, you can discuss alignment, you can discuss chart types, all that kind of stuff up front, so that again your build time in Tableau is reduced by quite a bit. So then I have a couple of tips I put together on how to prototyping. This guy Robert Janizek created this UI kit that's actually pretty incredible. This is the website for it, where you can go and dig into it and purchase it. But it is basically, he designed something in Figma that allows you to use images and chart types that look exactly like they do in Tableau. So all the filters, the date filters, all of those things are all built in Figma already, so that you're able to just pull pieces of that together and create your own dashboard. It really speeds up wireframe development. So you can see, obviously, everything matches Tableau. All of these filters look exactly like they do in Tableau. He created like light and dark modes if you want to switch back and forth between them. And then, so to purchase this, it's actually like a pay once, use forever. So if it's an individual, you're paying $250. For it's a team, if you have a team of people, you pay $400 for unlimited users. So it's a one-time cost that then you get every upgrade that he comes out with in the future. It's very beneficial as far as a pricing structure goes. But this is something we capitalize on quite often, because it allows you to not have to build every single line, every single every single axis for every chart. You can just grab the chart out of the UI kit and then use it in your own dashboards. So what this looks like from a Figma standpoint is like this. So these are the examples that he has created. If we look at like an individual example, so we have this dashboard kind of created 4 ways that allows you to look at all the different charts. So we can see obviously has a navigation bar up at the top, but all of this stuff is swappable. So really, like if you click into these things and we get all the way into this chart, there's all of these toggles over on the right that allow you to add a 3rd line if you want, or you can take away the header. Like it's very easy to iterate through these charts to make them to look exactly the way that you want them to. You can change colors really simply at the bottom. You can just like grab a different blue. Let's say we want to use, that blue instead. It's really easy to go through and change these charts to look exactly how you want them to look and how your organization will use them the most. And then you can use, he has kind of like preset layouts that you can plug and play different charts into, or you can just kind of set the chart the way you want it and copy it and paste it into your own file, which is what I tend to do a lot. And then use it in your own prototype for whatever dashboard it is that you're producing. So this is a really great tool to use in prototyping or wireframing. Another big tip that I have is don't try to make your data look real. I did this one time with a client where I had already done a little bit of data work on the back end. So I was like, I'll just throw in one KPI and I'll just tell him that this one KPI is close to what reality is like. And he immediately got lost in the detail of that one KPI. He was like, what are the filters you're using? What's the field that's going on? How are you counting that? Is that account distinct? Is that, he immediately got off tracked onto the data side of it, which is not the point of a wireframe. So he, I learned my lesson from that. And I don't even if I have an idea of what the data should look like, I don't try to make it look real at all, just so that they don't even try to get distracted by real data, because those are the main questions. And so if you want them to really make a decision on design, it's really important that you don't distract them with data. So use as much of the company's branding as you can as well. I'm sure every single company out there, your marketing department has some sort of branding document that has been created. So it's got colors, it's got logos, it's got text faces, it's got everything that you'd need to kind of show what your marketing department uses for your company. So if you want to brand it very similarly to your standard set of palettes, we do this a lot as consultants. I reach out to marketing departments all the time and get whatever their most recent branding document is. And what's really nifty in Figma too is you can actually create like a standards in Figma once you have kind of a list of all of these things. So we've done this as a company where we kind of have a landing place for all of our different Figma elements that we use. So we obviously have 3 different types of logos that we have collected. We have a whole list of colors and buttons and all this stuff that we use consistently when we make dashboards for internal use or for like networking or marketing or anything like that. This is where we kind of come and start. So we are able to make all of our dashboards really consistent. We have backgrounds that we've created with icons and titles and all that stuff, so that anytime we need to make a new dashboard, we just come in here and we are able to utilize these files again and again throughout our organization. So this has been extremely helpful. I do this for each client that I have as well. Kind of just do a collection so that you can, have all of your color codes in one place, so that you don't have to go back and search different files. It all just kind of lives in Figma. So this is also a really useful tool. I also like to add annotations to explain interactivity in wireframes, which you could see in both of the ones that I presented earlier. There's obviously these little pointers that allow you to see where you'd click, where you'd hover, what are the things that you're going to be able to interact with once Tableau is live, What are the buttons going to do? How are they going to change the data on your dashboard? So, you can view the map by the region, all this stuff. There's lots of ways to kind of filter through and navigate with each dashboard. So it allows kind of information in a way that will be interactive in Tableau, but obviously isn't on an image or a PDF. And lastly, my last tip is don't worry about getting it to 100%. A lot of times you might have a couple meetings of iterations that you go through with your stakeholder, your manager, whoever your end user is. And then at the end of it, your last meeting, you'll be like, okay, well, we're really close. We just have a couple more tweaks to do on this, and then we're good to go into the dashboard. I don't usually worry about getting those last tweaks into my wireframe because I'm just going to build it in Tableau, and then we'll see those last tweaks created in the actual dashboard. So because it's an image and it's not interactive, it's not a Tableau dashboard, it's never going to be 100% exactly like what Tableau looks like. So I try to, set my perfectionism on a shelf for a little bit and allow myself to just get it as close as possible. So those are kind of my prototyping tips, and that's kind of the walkthrough on that. So it's like one of the first ways that we use Figma is to do these prototyping and the wireframing. The other way is to do integrating into Tableau. So creating pieces of design in Figma and then taking those pieces and those elements and bringing them into Tableau and using them for different interactive elements. The 4 ways, we've kind of discussed this already, are dashboard backgrounds, interactive buttons, icons, and a dashboard overlay. So I have another resource here that is a Milwaukee Tug presentation that I did back in November of 2022. This is the YouTube video for presentation, which I won't have you guys walk through, but it was all about parameters, but I did basically a how-to on how to build buttons and create buttons and then use parameter actions in Tableau to make those buttons work. So if you want to dig deep into actually how to do this, I've already walked through this whole presentation, but it is a really great way to add an extra element of interactivity into your dashboards. So to showcase this, I actually have a dashboard already built that I can show you the 4 elements in this dashboard. So the first one that we do is the background. So this is a pretty simple dashboard. It looks like it's just one chart. Spoiler alert, it's not just one chart. But you're going to use these buttons that I created over here to interact with this dashboard and to kind of change the look and feel of it based on what you want to see. So the first thing is this background. So the background that I created, I can actually show you in Figma. This is the background file in Figma. Created the different shapes. Obviously, the rounded corners or something Tableau has not been able to figure out quite yet. And the drop shadow is something that I am able to integrate with Figma that's not a Tableau element. I also like to put things like logos and titles in Figma, because when you have multiple dashboards within the same workbook, it's a really easy way to make sure that those are always consistent in the same spot. For me, it's very distracting when someone goes through a presentation and, I'm just watching their little logo move by like 5 or 6 pixels in the corner. That's all I'm interested in, is where is this logo going to go on the next slide? And their content is like completely missing me, which is disappointing. But that's one thing that you can kind of nail down in Figma, that then you don't have to worry about containers or anything like that in Tableau. Things are just static. So this is what the background looks like in Figma. And then obviously we bring it into Tableau. It's a floating container in Tableau that can just be moved around, but you can see it behind all my data. And it just kind of provides another element of kind of polish on this dashboard. And the way that you get files from Figma into Tableau is you actually just download them as a PNG. So if you click on like the outside frame and scroll down to export, there's a whole export option over here. We usually use PNG, but there's a couple of other options within the export that you can do different types of files, and then you'll just export the background. You'll save it somewhere locally. These icons were for a internal dashboard we made, which maybe we'll present at some point, but not right now. So just in case, I am a Bears fan, which I know is kind of not great, but I am partial to Wisconsin in general over Illinois, even though I grew up there. So actually switches you to a map. And then 3 different charts in here that are being controlled with parameter actions to switch between depending on what button you have clicked on. The same thing is true about these. These are actually more of a filter action. So even though it's the same, so I'm still looking at the map. I'm going to click on Chuck's name, and now I'm going to see Chuck's region. So it's the ability to use these buttons instead of the drop-down filters that Tableau automatically gives you. It's a way to kind of drive interactivity a little bit better. It's a way to make interactivity just more intuitive by nature. Like, people know how to click on buttons. They just know, especially when they're big red ones and they say don't press. Those are the ones that you want to press. So people know how to interact with buttons very well. And it's providing interactivity that way so that it takes away some of that cognitive load that Olga was talking about, and lets you just kind of see your options without having to do drop downs. So these buttons, this is actually what I go through and discuss on my other presentation that I'll send out with this presentation. So if you guys want to learn how to make these, I'll do so in that presentation that you can watch. But these individual elements are what's actually made in Figma. So if we look at these buttons, I have all of them, both their selected version and their unselected version, in Figma individually. And then these are exported again into my shape Tableau repository and then accessed in Tableau. So that's kind of the short version of how to do that. But now this dashboard has become, instead of you just looking at one chart, I actually have 12 different charts in here, since we're looking at 3 different chart types with 4 different filter options. We have 12 different charts. So it becomes a lot more powerful instead of just showcasing one thing at a time. The next thing that's really great about Figma that you can integrate into Tableau is these little icons. So there's 2 icons up here that I use. This one is just a show hide button for a container that shows and hides any extra filters that I have. This is something I use on a lot of dashboards for clients, because there's plenty of times where there's a couple main filters that people use a lot, and then there's, all these secondary filters that people constantly want to have available to them but aren't necessarily used and will just take up a really good amount of space on your dashboard. This is a really easy way to hide away all those extra filters, but to still make them accessible by your user. So this is just a container, which I can show you if we get in here. This is just a container here that has this filter in it. And then all you do is create this image. So again, I have this image in Figma down here that I have exported into a local folder. And then you're able to access it as your item shown, your item hidden. One thing I do love, you can actually change the look of the icon. If everything's popped up, you can kind of reverse the colors if you want. This is really great with a menu option if you have like the 3 bars for your menu, and then you want to have an X, which is actually the default in Tableau for a show hide button. This is a really nice way to, again, drive interactivity without having to have extra ink on your dashboard. And then lastly, the last thing that I have is under this icon, actually, there is the overlay. So what overlays are is a way to have, like I said, live-in documentation within your dashboard. So it's another image that's popped up over the top of your dashboard that gives information on how to use the dashboard. So it lets you add extra color to this is where you want to click for this. If you want to get this, want to navigate to this place, click here. If you want to know data definitions, you can include data definitions in this so that, you know, this dashboard is mostly about profit. How am I calculating profit? What does profit mean? What does sales mean? Who's in charge of these different regions? How do we decide that? All that stuff. That can all live in this overlay so that you can just, instead of having people navigate to a different site or ask questions, they just, all of this information can live in there. One thing I've also used overlays for is, you know, the amount of people that actually want to download their data in Excel. There's kind of, you know, instructions on how to do that, especially in cloud. So I've included that as like a little step-by-step in overlays as well, which is a really great use case also. So those are kind of the 4 high-level ways to use Figma within Tableau, which I can show you what the overlay looks like in Figma as well if we go down here. So this is what the overlay looks like without any of the Tableau elements included. So this, again, you'll create in Figma and then just export it as an image and plop it in to your dashboard. And then again, it's another show hide button as well. So yeah, so that kind of brings me to the end of the Figma portion of my presentation. Before we move on to the best practices, I think it's important to kind of talk about why we want to look at best practices. I know Olga had a really great presentation talking about cognitive load and like reasons why, you know, attention span for people. So how do we keep people engaged in our dashboards? And really what we're trying to do is drive adoption and return use to our dashboards. So if our dashboards are not easy to understand and keep people's attention, they're less likely to actually come back and use them again. So what we want to do is try to reduce that cognitive load as much as we can to allow people to understand the purpose of the dashboard without getting distracted by all these extra elements that can appear often on dashboards. So a lot of times we see good dashboards and we see bad dashboards. And sometimes we can just very inherently say, well, that one's good and that one's bad. But why? Really discussing like why do dashboards look good and why do dashboards look bad? Like what parts of those elements of design are making a dashboard good, a dashboard bad? So a lot of this actually overlaps too. The reason that this is such a good graphic design conversation is because this overlaps with things like apps and websites and stuff like that. This is stuff that we interact with all the time. We're a very digital generation. You know, a lot of us are on computers and websites and apps on our phones all the time. And there's ways that we just generally understand how to interact with the digital world. And so using those elements in your dashboard is just going to help drive adoption by your users more and more if they don't have to learn how to interact with your dashboards. So cognitive load in general is like the amount of effort required to think and reason and the amount of information our working memory can process at any given time, which is something that Olga also went over. And what this reminds me of is, you know, when you're in the middle of working on something at your desk at work and somebody walks up to you and tries to ask you a question, you're like, dude, I literally can't even hear you right now because of how much stuff is going on in my brain. You have to kind of almost like work through the rest of whatever you're working on or like close a couple mental browser tabs in order to even like pull your attention away and listen to what they're saying and ask what question they're asking. That's what cognitive load is the ability to hold information in your brain at any one point in time. So what are these best practices? A couple of these are things that Olga went through, a couple of them are not. So pre-attentive attributes, which she talked about how people read dashboards, which is also something she talked about. What people expect to see, I'm going to kind of talk about with as far as like, again, like I said, like websites and apps and how we expect to interact with the digital world. The data to ink ratio is something that's really common in a company called Storytelling with Data. They talk about this a lot. And then lastly, chart type selection, which is also a really important part of dashboard building. So talking about pre-attentive attributes, I won't go into this in super ton of detail since Olga did a really good job of it earlier, but there are visual features that are processed quickly and or automatically by our eyes when we see them. So movement, color, orientation, shape, and size are all things that fall under pre-attentive attributes. And then there's this really great video that Playfair Data actually came up with. That's a really good just video to watch through for pre-attentive attributes. So I'm going to hit play on this real quick. It's only like 30 seconds. So. Yep. So obviously in all of those things, there are ways, each one of those pieces had a specific item that your eyes were immediately drawn to based on motion or color or size. And you were able to immediately see the one item. And that's what pre-attentive attributes are. So the reason that this is so important in dashboard development is that we want to use these features intentionally, especially things like color. Color is something that we take for granted a lot. There's a lot of different places where color is overused or color is underused, or the same color applies to multiple different items across a dashboard, and then each time they look at a new chart, they have to also process the legend to make sure that they're understanding what color means. Instead of that, we would rather have color be very intentional and say, okay, every time I show this color, I want it to mean the same thing across every dashboard. So things like gender, like you're always going to want, males to be one thing, females to be another thing. And using that consistently across the board for like HR dashboards allows for people to not have to relearn something every time they use your dashboard. So for example, in this presentation, all of my links are the exact same color across the whole dashboard. So I know every time I see this like nice teal blue, it's something to click on. So stuff like that is actually pre-attentive attribute in this presentation. So the next thing is kind of how people read dashboards, which Olga went through really well. This link at the bottom here is actually a study that Tableau did back in like 2017 at their conference, which was about eye tracking, which is very similar to what Olga showed. And you really understand that people look at the top left first and they kind of read left to right. And then they will go across the bottom left and read left to right, which makes sense because that's, in English, we read left to right. So that's kind of how we read things in general. The reason that this is important in dashboard development is really capitalizing on people's natural desire to look somewhere. So your most important information needs to go in the top left. You can even see in this example here, that's kind of what they do. They start with really high level stuff on the left, and they kind of break it down a little bit more as you go along, and then things get a little bit more detailed. You see some trending, you see some stuff that's broken down over time. You see more detailed information in the bottom left, and then you get all the way to the bottom right and you have actual descriptions of information. That's like the last thing that you want people to process is maybe a table or something that's very detailed. But it's a really great way to incorporate that storytelling into your dashboard to make sure that people actually follow along with the narrative that you're trying to tell. The next thing is, this is kind of something I alluded to a little bit already, but what people are expecting to see when they interact with the digital world are things like menus, buttons, icons, and layout. People, know to kind of look at the top right for if you're looking for a menu button, that's probably where it is. They kind of intuitively know these things. So I like pulling up different websites and looking at things like even Google. Like we look at Google, we interact with Google all the time. We don't really think about it. But this little icon, the little magnifying glass icon, always means search. Every website, every app that you're on, this icon, if you want to search, you're going to click on that icon. So that's something that you don't have to write the words search here, like to search, click here. Those are extra words that people have to process. All you need to do is put a little icon that's the magnifying glass, and people intuitively know that this is your search function. We also know things like buttons, like both of these, we know these are buttons. We don't have to have them say like, click here to Google search, click here to, randomly search Google, which is what the I'm feeling lucky means. And you don't have to know that. Like even this blue, like we can tell this is a link. So these are things that people intuitively know how to interact with. Even things like Apple, like Apple's website. These are, huge companies. We know that these words up at the top are not just words that exist there. We know that those are all links that you want to click on because we know what a menu looks like intuitively. Same with these buttons. These buttons look like buttons. What makes them look like buttons? Well, we just know what a button looks like, like it's not digging, it's using those kinds of processes that people already have and capitalizing on them so that you don't have to reteach them things. Because the other thing that will cause people to not want to come back and use your dashboards is if they have to spend a lot of time learning new things about your dashboard every time. The next point I want to talk about is the data ink ratio. So this is a concept that was originally introduced by Edward Tufte, and it's about maximizing the proportion of ink used to present actual data compared to the total amount of ink used in the display. So what this means is how much ink on your dashboard is dedicated to the data versus how much ink is actually on your whole dashboard as a total. So a really good example I have of this is these two separate charts, where on the left you see it has a very low data to ink ratio. There's a lot of ink, and the actual portion of it assigned to the data is much smaller. Whereas on the right, the majority of your ink on this chart is actually dedicated to the data presentation. And so we can talk about all the differences of that, the length of title, the background, the grid, the axes, the labels of the axes, the labels of the bars, the color of the bars, like even the borders of the bars are all things that are adding to the data and the ink ratio on the left, whereas on the right, most of those things are removed and stripped out. You're still seeing the same information, just presented in a much more visually appealing way that is then all of your attention is actually taken and put on the data rather than processing all the other information. Like even there's no axis labels because your chart title is descriptive enough to tell you we know it's sales and we know it's by month and we know it's 2020. So we don't have to process those things a second time when we look at the chart. We just already, if we read the title, we know what the chart is. So this is a really great way to help reduce that cognitive load on the user again, because there's not multiple things that they're trying to process at the same time. And then lastly, chart type selection. So I have a couple of resources here that I really love that I've walked through a bunch of times. This first one is honestly one of my favorite dashboards of all time, which is, I don't know if that says something about me or not, but this is a great description of what kind of charts you use and why. So this kind of starts you in the middle, and what do you want to show? Like what in general are we actually looking at? Are we looking at relationship data? Are we looking at comparison data, distribution, composition? And then once you understand that, you kind of work outwards and see like, are we looking over time? Are we looking at cyclical information, non-cyclical, single or few categories? So this is a very easy way to like walk through what's the best chart for you to use for a specific instance. Like we talked about, pie charts have a really bad rap in the data community right now, but that's because people use them incorrectly a lot. That doesn't mean that they actually have no use. They actually have a very specific use. And when they're used for that specific instance, they're very powerful. But it's knowing what that use is and choosing that chart intentionally. So the second resource I have here is this chart guide, which is built by this company, Storytelling with Data, which I've mentioned already. But they have a link to all of these different charts and kind of what their purpose is. So it walks you through when to choose them, why to choose them, all that information. So if we click on a pie chart, for example, it says that a myth is that pie charts are evil. They're actually not. But again, you have to ask yourself why. Do pies actually make the most sense for this situation? And so this is a great article that really pulls you through all the different types of pie charts. When you use pie charts, what's the point of using pie charts? When should I not use a pie chart? So this is a great example because we have these two slices here that in a pie chart look very similar. It's really hard to tell here whether D or C is a bigger piece of the pie. But when you look at it from a bar chart, you can obviously see that C is slightly bigger than D. So is the pie chart in this situation the best choice? Probably not. So then it also talks through like when you have a bad situation, how to actually capitalize on it. So when there's too many slices here, maybe we need to just reduce our categories by grouping all of these extra slices together into an other category so that we're now looking at the three big categories and then everything else. So this website also has all of that different stuff about line charts, square charts, slope graphs, all these different things. So this is also a really great resource for what when you're trying to decide what chart to use on your dashboard. This is a great place to go. These last two are actually Tableau public builds on some like dictionaries of chart types. So this one gives you, these are a little bit more complicated ones. So these are not your basic bar chart, line chart. These are some more complicated charts. But each one of these dots actually gives you a link to the tutorial or the blog post on how to build each one of these. So again, this is a really great resource if you're like, oh, I really want to learn how to build a dumbbell chart. Well, here's two resources for you to go and learn how to build this chart. The last one is, of course, Kevin Flurledge. He created a catalog of sorts where there's actually 100 different charts on here. And all of these have links to different other Tableau public dashboards that use these charts. So like how to do a gauge. If you click on it, it'll take you to the dashboard that utilize this, and then you can download it and dig into it on your own. So this obviously has a lot of different band options in here. So here's the gauge. So if you go to the bottom and we can download the Tableau workbook, you can dig in and see how this is all made. So again, this is a really great resource for how-tos on chart types. So in general, using all of these 5 concepts together really allows you to capitalize on the user's understanding of psychology and the way that they already view dashboards, the way that our brains are already trained to process information, and it'll allow for better, faster understanding of your data. It'll help you keep your points to each dashboard should have a purpose. It helps keep that purpose really, really clear as you work. So these really will take your dashboards from mediocre or even good to really great, polished, professional dashboards. So yeah, I think we have time for some questions. So I don't know if anything came through that would be interesting.
Yep. Yes. Thank you, Haley. That was, Katie.
I know it's confusing.
I'm sure that's not the first time that has happened. Thank you, Katie. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Question from Adrian was the quality of the exported PNGs. What if the files are too big?
So I've actually never had them be too big. In Figma, you can choose what your export quality is. So I usually do it on 2x. You can go all the way up to 4x, or you can be very specific on how you're exporting them. I've never had the files actually be too big for Tableau to handle. I know that if they're too small, they can be a little blurry if the quality is not quite there. So usually you'd want to step up your export a little bit to help make sure that blurriness doesn't happen, especially when you publish to Tableau Cloud. It's good to have a little bit more, just a little bit more detail on your image when you download it from Figma.
Awesome. Okay. 2 more questions. Question from Rosa. What happens to Figma generated templates depending on your choice of the page size? For example, desktop or automatic or so forth.
Yeah, so automatic dashboards, it's really hard to use backgrounds with because obviously it's changing on whatever computer size people open with. You usually want to go with dashboards that you're going to choose to have at a specific size. Our default usually at Rising Tides is to do a PowerPoint view. Obviously this one isn't because this was for a specific use case, but when we do dashboards for our clients, we usually pick the 16 by 9 or 1600 by 900 pixels. Automatic does not work with set backgrounds because they're obviously not going to size with your computer screen. And then if you're also swapping like devices, there are ways to like hide backgrounds so that you can be more specific based on what device layout you're actually working with. So you can have a layout specifically for like an iPad shape versus a desktop shape versus a phone shape. And you can be intentional about that design as well, which is something I'd recommend if you're throwing different device layouts, no matter what, but especially with backgrounds being, you can build different backgrounds for different sizes as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And one more question. This one comes from Tosh. How much time would you estimate that you saved by creating a wireframe to share with the end user instead of starting with a Tableau dashboard right away?
Oh man, I would say hours. Because I mean, the amount of times that you will build certain visualizations a certain way, you know, you gather requirements from your stakeholder and you think they mean one thing. And then you build all of it out really well in Tableau and then you present it to them and they're like, actually, this isn't what I wanted. You spent all of that time like really dedicating, you know, all of your calculated fields, all of your data manipulation in Tableau. Whereas if you had started with a wireframe, it would have taken, you know, maybe an hour to build your wireframe. And then you can have that discussion. The hard thing is we say this all the time. A lot of times stakeholders actually don't know what they want until they see it. So it really helps you walk through that process quicker and takes your workload down a lot. So that by the time you get into Tableau, you know what you're building and that it's actually what they want. It's not just, you know, your interpretation of what they want. They've already seen it. They've already agreed to it. And you're not going to waste extra time on that.
Awesome. Thank you. And that is all of the questions, Kaylee. So she's Katie. I am sorry. Names are hard today, apparently.
It's totally fine.
I am so sorry. Excellent presentation, Katie. I think everyone, if you have a chance to read through the chat, there were lots of really positive comments as you were talking. So
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we will move on to the next part. Let me get my screen share going again.
Otherwise, I can do it if you need me to.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Brady? Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay.
All right. So Robert had to drop. He had an emergency. So Brady is going to share some takeaways from TC25 with us.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. 2 great presentations following up. So try to keep this informative. I know there's a lot of YouTube videos out there, I'm sure, of a lot of people going through this, but I just want to take a few minutes and go over some of the things that really stuck out to me from the Tableau conference going a couple weeks ago. As I kind of said earlier, like my big, that they started this, it's always been like you bought Tableau, you use different products, you use Prep, Bridge, Cloud, Server, but normally you paid for the same thing. If you have desktop and you have cloud, it's the same license. That's starting to separate with Tableau Plus and Next. This is where they're integrating more AI features, large language models. Building Tableau Next isn't like more built into Salesforce. Tableau Plus is like an improvement on Tableau Cloud, and those are separate features. They cost differently. Tableau Plus is substantially more. I haven't seen any prices for Tableau Next. Seems like Tableau Next, most of that's supposed to be launching throughout this year. There's not a ton there currently, but it's gonna, by the end of the year, I think Tableau Next is going to be another thing to look into. I had to talk with our team. Our takeaways is what do we want to do with Tableau? Are we a Tableau? Want to use AI? Or we want to stick more with if our user, we don't think the users are going to use that, we would want to bring it up. So I think it's internal, external. I think those are things as AI becomes more and more prevalent and more expensive to use for dashboarding, for analyzing data. It's important to think about that for you and your company. One of the things they've integrated was using LLMs. They're really hammering home. I think the word was Salesforce Trust. Is that like any data that goes through that goes through Tableau is not being used to train large language models. It's all covered. It's all probably randomized and demo data basically, so they can't track it. I've always built dashboards in desktop, but web editing it's in cloud now. If you have Tableau Plus, where we use AI to help you build your dashboards as you're working on them. If you use a web edit, so that'll be something. If you have Tableau Plus, would be something you want to consider instead of just using desktop like I normally do. Tableau has cool features, predictive modeling. I've had clients ask a lot about building models, and I haven't really felt comfortable working with that for most cases. Tableau Next seems like that would have a pretty good idea. Pretty good next step on that. What if analysis, predictive. One of the examples I went to was churn rates. Predicting what those churns would be. It was on their roadmap in terms of coming this summer, though. They didn't have too much on Tableau Next currently, but they're launching more products, like with things within it, features over this year. Overall, I think a lot of the feedback I got by coworkers that went last year was that AI was more of a buzzword than like actual features, and I think this year was pretty was more like seeing what those features actually are, and then what those see going forward. I went to a presentation on RollStack, which was, I thought, incredibly cool technology. You can embed dashboards straight into Word / Sheets / PowerPoint / Google Docs, like Google Docs or Microsoft files. Just embed it right in there so the dashboards will automatically update in the file. For the users that have thousands of users, that could be pretty helpful. It is a pretty large expense, but if you have a bunch of users, that could be something that saves you a lot of time. And like our user base is more spread out across different clients, so just a little harder for us to do that. Tableau Pulse has definitely improved. I turned it on a couple weeks ago for one of my other internal projects that last time I touched Pulse was like a year ago. I just hadn't really gone back to it. But a lot of the insights they have some basic AI features, and the breakdowns are pretty helpful as well. So I like it. I think it's improved a lot from when they first launched it, and it's free. It's included in Tableau Cloud. I should say it's not free, but it's included in Tableau Cloud. You can turn it on for limited users or for everyone. And then one of my other takeaways is data documentation is very important. That's one of my goals for this year. I'm working on is helping my internal and external users. And Tableau Plus does have things you can like automatically do that for you, building data dictionaries and catalogs, things like that. So pretty helpful. One of the things I wanted to cover is so like this is on Tableau Cloud. So there's like differences. One of the things I definitely won't forget from the conference was be careful of what you're actually signing up for. So I was at a Tableau Plus presentation, and the people in front of us had signed up. Basically, he asked a question. They'd demoed all the cool AI features, and the people in front of us asked, so this is what we were all sold on, but we got Tableau Cloud. Will we get any of this? And the answer, you can see the product on his face, is not the first time he's been asked this question, and basically said there's been like some differences on what's being sold and what's actually like what's being promised by account people and sometimes what's actually happening. So the difference is like this is the Tableau Cloud. These features are included with Tableau Cloud, and then these four right here are Tableau Plus, and they were kind of sold on these. Those are just be very careful as they're starting to break apart what the offerings are. Make sure you're getting exactly what you're looking for, and not being oversold or undersold on something that's not actually what you're buying. Would be my recommendation. That's all I got. Do you want me to keep sharing, Tammy?
Yes, that'd be great. That would be easier. So thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to just wrapping up the day. Other upcoming events, the Data Book Club meets next Friday on May 9th. So if you're a member of that, be sure that you remember to attend that. Upcoming TUG roadmaps, the Milwaukee TUG will have an in-person meeting on May 28th. The Madison TUG will have an in-person meeting on June 12th. And then the Wisconsin TUG, which is always virtual, will be sometime in late July. So look for an update on that. And then the TUG swag giveaway. Tosh, who are today's winners?
Yes, so we have 3 randomly selected winners out of our attendees. I just got 2 emails. I'm just waiting on one more to make sure we get our winners what their swag is. But the first winner is Brad Davidson. The second winner is Catherine Verplank. And the third winner is Radhika Rangarajan. So thank you for attending. We really appreciate it. And Radhika, please send me your email if you can so we can make sure you get your swag giveaway.
Awesome. Thank you, Tosh. And then with that, that wraps up our meeting for this afternoon. So we can give you about 7 minutes of your day back. So thank you so much for attending today and staying engaged. We had some awesome content today. So I myself can't wait to use some of these things in practice. So thank you to Olga and to Katie, both of our presenters, for the material that you presented, and we'll see you all in about 3 months.
Thank you, everyone.